Hello guys, and welcome back to Joe's Ventures, and today we're going to be doing part 8, I believe, of our Planet Zoo mod spotlights. So we're going to get a few more of these to do before the 30th of March, when the Southeast Asia pack comes out. So yeah, I'm kind of excited to get into this. We're going to start with this little animal here. We're going to start with this little guy, let's see if we can spot him. We've got the raccoon. This is obviously based off the red panda. So, what is a raccoon? Or trash panda is the more common name these days, and I quite like it. So, the raccoon, also known as Procyon locator or lotor, that's the scientific name, is a medium-sized mammal from North America and gets to about 40 to 70 centimeters in length and a body weight of 5 to 26 kilos when they get really fat. They're really charismatic for these, this like face mask that they have and the banded tail, and they have a very, very dense grey fur that they use to keep cool. And they have got like a very intelligent too. They can use their front paws as their hands, and are very intelligent and very, very often considered a pest where they live. Just because they live in such high numbers, and animals like wolves don't really live in these areas anymore and don't control their population, so they've really adapted to these urban areas. And they're omnivorous. They kind of just eat whatever they can at night. They can eat between about 40% invertebrates, 33% plants, and 27% vertebrates, so they kind of eat whatever they can. So they usually live in detritus and mixed forests, but due to their adaptability, they can live pretty much anywhere. Mountainous areas, urban areas, marshes, coasts, and all that, and they're considered pests. And even though they're native to North America, they have been introduced into the Caucasus, mainland Europe, and Japan for whatever reason, probably for the fur trade. But these guys also have very, very sex-specific social behaviors. So kind of a female will live in a group with other females, they live in an area together, while few males will do the same, but mostly kind of just divide up the females. And they have very variable home ranges. They can be from 3 hectares for a female in city, and for a male in prairie can be up to 5,000 hectares. So what's really cute is that also after gestation, about 65 days, 2 to 5 young known as kits, so that's a technical term for babies, are born in the spring, and they're raised until late fall by their mother, and they have a life expectancy of about 20 years in captivity. In the wild, it's only about 1.8 to 3.1. So the issue with that is often they get predated on by other predators like wolves and basically anything big enough to eat them. And in the wild, even though they're considered least concerned, so they're doing okay, they are a big they get hunted a lot, and obviously get eaten by certain people as well, and get into a lot of accidents. So that's the main mortality rate for these guys in wildlife areas, which is kind of sad. So yeah, they're very, very cool. I think they're very cool. I think they're great even. Very, very adaptable. And I think they're very cute, and it's quite a good mod. So yeah, I think we should move on to the next guy. Let's move on to the next guy. We haven't got too many big animals today or anything big, but I think this is a good one just to explore and talk about animals. So now we've got, look at these little guys, we've got the meerkats. Now these are based on red ruffed lemurs. Can't wait for meerkats in game. Meerkats are such great charismatic animals. So meerkats are a small mongoose species found in South Africa, or Southern Africa technically, and they have these braided patterns that kind of make them charismatic, and they've got this pointed snout. And the head's body length is between 24 and 35 centimeters long, and weigh between 0.62 and 0.97 kilos, so a little about 2 pounds if you're obviously in the States and use the Imperial. The coat is light grey to yellowish brown with light bands going down the back, and males have a foreclaw and adapted for digging, and have the ability to thermoregulate in harsh, dry habitats. So these guys are considered eusocial and form packs of 2 to 30 individuals, occupy a home range around 5 kilometers squared. If you guys have seen Meerkat manner, you'll know about this. I love the Meerkat manner. It's a social hierarchy. Usually there's generally dominant individuals within the pack, and they breed and produce offspring, while the non-breeding subordinate members provide care to these pups. So it's usually only the top members of the group producing pups, while the subordinate animals kind of take care of them. They live in rocky crevasses and stony, and have these large burrow systems. They burrow and they can get up to 5 meters deep, or 5 meters in diameter, and with 15 openings, with a lot of these different trackways and such, and tunnels that go through, and very interconnected. And these burrows have a very, very moderated internal temperature, so it's kind of very stable compared to the outside. And so these, and a microclimate, so if the day is extra hot or extra cold or whatever, they can go down into the burrows and have much more stable habitat there. So they're active during the day, mostly between, they're kind of crepuscular, so to speak. They're usually out in early morning and late afternoon, and they continually return to their burrows as they sense danger. They always remain constantly alert. If you see videos of meerkats at the zoo, they stand up on their back legs and they go, "What was that?" Always keeping an eye out for predators. And they have these very, very broad calls that they use to communicate with each other. And, for example, they will have a call that means, "Oh, there's a predator, we've got to let everyone know." So these guys are primarily insectivorous, so they mainly eat insects, but they'll also eat beetles and butterflies. They'll eat arthropods. They'll eat small birds, mammals, small mammals, of course. That's smaller than them. There's not that much smaller than them. Small birds, reptiles, plant material, amphibians, and arthropods. So they kind of just really eat what they can. And breeding occurs round the year, so they don't really have a breeding season per se. They have a gestation about 60 to 70 days for a litter, and a litter of 3 to 7 pups are born. So these guys are also commonly found in arid open habitats with a lot of woody vegetation. They can be found in southwestern Botswana, western southern Namibia, northern and western South Africa, and they range barely extends to southwest Angola. And these guys have no significant threat to their populations other than obviously things like habitat destruction that affects a lot of species more than them. These guys are considered least concern, and obviously very, very famous for things like Meerkat Manor and the Lion King, you know, Timon and all that. And yeah, wonderful. I'm not sure this is the best mod I've seen, honestly, but it's nice to have meerkats. I really hope that we get meerkats in the game eventually. Very, very charismatic animals. And yeah, time to move on to the next guys. And this one's a new species. This is our first new species. And I'm not sure it's stored properly, but we can have a look anyway. This is the North American otter. I believe that should be right. I'm not sure. Is this right? Let me check. Yes, that is a North American otter. For some reason the Zoopedia didn't install correctly, but this is completely a new species, so that's awesome. These guys are also known as the common otter, or the Northern River otter, and these guys are found across North America around the waterways and coasts. So an adult can reach to about 5 kilos to 14 kilos, and they have this really thick coat that allows them to swim around in cold water without getting cold. So these guys are pretty versatile. They establish a burrow close to the water's edge, and they kind of just live in it. They have many openings, which the otters will use frequently, just as they need. And these dens, often they give birth to their pups in these, and they produce litters from 1 to 6, so it's quite a few little things. And North American river otters eat pretty much whatever they can. They'll eat, their favourite is fish, but they'll also eat amphibians such as salamanders and frogs, freshwater clams, mussels, snails, turtles, and crayfish, or small turtles. The most common fish they'll eat is treech, suckers, and catfish, and they have been known to eat other small mammals such as mice and squirrels, and occasionally birds have been reported, but this seems to be not anything common, and there's even been reports of them eating drowning dogs, attacking and eating drowning dogs, which I'm not sure how likely or possible that is. Look at these little guys. They're cute. I think these are based off the juvenile giant otter. Let's come back. Run, run, run. Fish over there. They'll come and eat their food. So they range all across North America, but they have been significantly reduced by habitat loss, just like a lot of species. And in some regions, their population is controlled by trapping and harvesting for their pelts, which is another thing that controls their numbers. So these guys are also very, very susceptible to environmental pollution, so that's probably a very likely reason their numbers have declined. And there's been a bunch of reintroduction efforts that have been initiated to help reduce them to areas that they haven't that have been extirpated from, and help try and prevent this reduction in the population. It's pretty cool. But yeah, these guys need to be managed. They're not in the dire straits yet, but could be if we don't take care of our environments. I just think they're very cool. I just like how social they are as well. They like to hang out and play. Very, very cute. So yeah, this is the first, as I mentioned, new species mod, and I'll be covering more of these on the next one. So yeah, because I got this little backlog going up. So yeah, this is a very nice little mod by, this is, I believe, Nicholas Rhinerider, and if you want to learn more about how to install these species mods, new species mods, I would recommend going to Nicholas's Rhinerider's channel, who has a much more of an in-depth knowledge of how to install these mods, and he makes a lot of these mods himself, so I would recommend going checking out his channel, as he probably can explain it better than I can. So yeah. Next, we're going to be moving on to mountain goats. Good old mountain goats. Look at these wonderful guys. So yeah, mountain goats, also known as the Rocky Mountain Goat, is a hoofed mammal endemic to North America. We sure got a lot of North American animals today. These guys are common seen on cliffs of ice and are very short-footed, which is pretty cool. These guys are Artiodactyl and Bovidae, so these guys are related to other goats like wild sheep, muskox, and Tarkins and things like that. They are considered to be like convergent evolution with Tarkins, which is pretty cool. So these guys can get to about have long beards and have they get to about 15 to 28 centimeters long, and they have, you know how trees have growth rings? These guys have the same thing, so you can count how old they are. A male goat stands at about 1 meter at the shoulder, and to the waist can weigh considerably more than a female. Male goats also have longer horns and longer beards, so mountain goats can weigh between 45 and 140 kilograms, and billies often weigh less than 82. The head to body length ratio can range from 120 to 179 centimeters, with the small tail adding 10 to 20 centimeters. So these guys are found around the Rocky and Cascade Mountains, found from Washington, Idaho, Montana, through British Columbia to Alberta, into the southern Yukon and southeastern Alaska. So that's where they're found. So they're the largest mammal found in these altitudes. They can be found above 13,000 feet, which is about 4,000 meters above sea level. And they sometimes descend into coastal areas, although they primarily live in alpine and subalpine areas. They usually stay above the tree line throughout the year, but often migrate down to lower in elevations within their range and try to find things like salt licks, and often travel kilometers for that. And they just eat what they can. And these guys can be pretty aggressive, so you got to be careful, especially when you got to deal with wolves, lynxes, wolverines, bears, and mountain lions. That's what they got to do to survive. This has been introduced into Yellowstone, so I'm not sure if they're native there. Don't think they are. Look at these wonderful guys. Pretty good mod, to say so myself. So yeah, this replaces the female doll sheep. And now we've got to get to the next boy. We have got the giant forest hog. And these guys are cool. I like these guys very much. This replaces the common warthog male. There we are. So these guys are found in wooded habitats in Africa, and they are the largest pig species. Even though there are wild bull populations that can get larger, they are the largest on average. That's why they're called the giant forest hog. Adults can measure from 1.3 to 2.1 meters long from head to body length, and they stand to about 0.75 to 1.1 meters tall. and can weigh between 100 and 275 kilograms, so that's big. Females are smaller, and they average weigh about 167 kilograms, which is, on average, not as big as males, which get up to 210. What's really interesting is that there's 3 described subspecies that seem to be a climb from different areas in the habitat. There's some that live in more alpine areas, some that live, like, as they get down into cooler areas, they get bigger and all that. It's really, really interesting. And these giant hogs can be found in West and Central Africa, and can be found humid highlands from Mount Kenya and the Ethiopian highlands, and mainly found in forests, grass and mosaics. It can be seen in subalpine habitats up to about 3,800 meters. They are unable to cope with low humidity or prolonged exposure to the sun, so that's why they stay absent from regions like savannas and such. They tend to prefer these wooded habitats. So these guys are mainly herbivores, but also scavengers. They are usually considered nocturnal, but will be out during the day if it's cold enough. They live in herds or sondas, which are up to 20 animals containing female and offspring, and usually also a single male, older male. So all these guys, as all the suids in sub-Saharan Africa, these guys have not been domesticated, but can be easily tailored, and have been considered potential candidates for domestication. In the wild, though, it's more feared than the river hog, red river hog, and bush pig, as males will sometimes just attack you without warning. And they have been known to drive spotted hyenas away from carcasses and fight amongst males. They have resulted in the deaths of one of the participants. It's not common, so they're very, very aggressive. Obviously, I wouldn't want to mess with one of those. Despite the size and potential for aggressive behavior, they have been known to fall prey to leopards and clans of spotted hyenas, even though they have driven them away from kills. I guess sometimes it's just kind of what happens. And in some localities where these guys mix, they have been found to be preyed on by lions, even though they're usually segregated by habitat, as generally lions prefer the open savanna, and the forest hogs prefer the wooded habitats, and generally they do not mix. So yeah, very, very cool boys. I like these guys a lot. Very, very nice. Epic, even. And yeah, we've got the next guy here. We've got the Gen 2 penguin. I like Gen 2 penguins. So, these replace the female king penguin, of course. So these guys are most closely related to the Adelaide and the chinstrap penguin, and can be found on all sorts of subantarctic islands across the Southern Ocean. They get to about 51 to 90 centimeters tall, being the 3rd largest penguin species after the emperor and king penguins. They reach a maximum weight of about 80.5 kilos just before molting, and a minimum weight of 4'9" just before mating. For females, the maximum weight is 8.2 just before molting, but their weight drops a little 4.5 when guarding their nests with their chicks. Birds from the north are average 700 grams heavier and 10 centimeters taller than southern birds. Southern Gen 2 penguins reach 75 to 80 centimeters, and they're the fastest underwater swimmer of all the penguins, reaching speeds up to 36 kilometers, and Gen 2s are well adapted for the cold habitats of the Arctic and harsh climates. So there's a bunch of breeding colonies on places on all sorts of subantarctic islands, like the Falklands, South Georgia, Macrae Island, the Antarctic Peninsula, and there's believed to be a total breeding population of a little over 600,000 birds, and that may change with climate change. So these guys feed mainly on crustaceans such as krill and fish, and also eat a lot of squid and lobsters and things like that, and they just eat what they can, really. They also get preyed upon by leopard seals, sea lions, and killer whales, and on land the eggs usually get stolen by skuas and giant petrels, and yeah, that's one of the main predators they have. And they were listed at least this concern, although there have been rapid declines of population that's been seen, especially in places like South Georgia, where the population has dropped by 2/3 over the past 25 years. And yeah, these guys might be impacted by climate change quite a bit. So there's just... Also, we all know climate change is a big issue. But yeah, these are wonderful little guys. And now we've got to move on to an extinct animal. We're going to have an extinct animal in this one, isn't that crazy? So this is Ichthyostega, who's a very, very cool boy. this is a tender-spondle, which is an early amphibian, and it lived during the late Devonian, and was one of the first four-limbed animals in the fossil record, and also had lungs. So that's what makes it really weird. It's kind of like the ultimate. It's considered a stem tetrapod, which means it's the first animals to kind of come up and land a walk. And yeah, they weren't related to modern amphibians, but they are not considered that. That's why they're tender spondles, and often touted as a really important transitional fossil, which shows how fish evolved into tetrapods. That includes us, other mammals, reptiles, birds, and amphibians. So these guys got pretty big as well. They get to about 1.5 meters long, or 4'9". They have these really, really big flat skulls with forward-facing eyes like that. And they have very big limbs and have 7 digits on their fingers, which is really weird compared to a lot of tetrapods today. Usually it ranges no more than 5 digits. Like animals will lose digits, like T-Rex only has 2 digits. Moas lost their arms completely, but what makes this guy weird is that they had 7 digits on their hands, at least on the hind limb. They don't know the digits of the forelimbs, but it's really, really weird. And yeah, these guys are related to a bunch. This is when animals were really starting to come onto land, the late Devonian. This is related to things like Tiktaalik and Ichthyostega. It's kind of like a cline. It's really, really weird. So these guys were still swimming, but they have these really, really massive rib cages where they started to develop lungs. It started to breathe air. They needed to support themselves on land, so they get big strong legs, big strong ribs, big strong spines, and they still have this paddle. It's almost like a crocodile. And they have been compared to a lot of animals like mud skippers or a seal. And yeah, this is a really, really segment of study looking at the evolution of the limb and how animals evolved to, well, how tetrapods at least evolved to move on land. So yeah, very interesting little guy here. Very, very cool. And now we're going to move on to another guy. We've got, second to last, we've got the Syrian brown bear, which kind of explains in its name in itself. So this is the, come on, there we are. The Syrian brown bear is a relatively small subspecies of the brown bear found in the Middle East and the Caucasus, obviously in Syria. So what makes this guy really weird is also its size, but it also has this very, very light brown color to it, which makes it look very different. And these guys have about skulls that are 30 to 40 centimeters long and weigh up to about 250 kilograms. Just quite small on the bear side, but still a very big animal. And measure 101 to 140 centimeters from nose to tail. So these guys, obviously endangered. These guys are often threatened by large-scale forest fragmentation, degradation, and areas where beehives and livestock have been, where they raid, they kind of get really affected by that. There's a baby. So, local people often hunt these bears illegally for bear fat, which is thought to have medicinal value in the same way as bear bile. And these guys have been known to been killed during hunts for boars using dogs and poison baits, and snared illegally for red deer, roe deer, wolf, and lynx. So yeah, it's very sad. They're considered, they're a subspecies, but they are always in decline. I believe there's no more than a few hundred of them, sadly. But yeah, we need more justice for these beautiful boys. I quite like these guys. And last, but very, very much not least, we have got another subspecies of a famous animal. We have got the Sumatran Tiger. There should be the Sumatran Tiger at least. Two different. So the Sumatran Tiger is listed as critically endangered, and there's only about 441 to 679 individuals, with no population larger than 50 and a declining trend. So these guys are very likely on the way to extinction unless there's something done about it. So these are the only surviving Sunda Island tiger populations, with the Bali and Javan tigers most likely be going extinct. And these guys probably split off when the Sunda Islands became flooded, or became a thing really, during the late Pleistocene, or the border of the Holocene, about 12,000 to 6,000 years ago. And there's all sorts of different DNA that tells them they're pretty distinct. So these guys are one of the smallest tigers. These guys get to about 2.2 and 2.55 in head and body length, with the greatest length of about 295 to 305 millimeters between the head and body. And they weigh between 100 and 140 kilograms, and females weigh between 75 and 110 kilograms, and measure between 2.15 and 2.30 meters long, 2.30 meters long between their pegs, and the greatest skull length of 263 to 294 centimeters long. So these guys are very fragmented habitat across Sumatra. Of course, and that's the name Sumatran Tiger. And a lot of them is just not huge because there's massive amounts of deforestation for palm oil plantations, and these guys are really having issues along with Sumatran rhinos, Sumatran elephants, and Sumatran orangutans. All sorts of different species are being affected by this, especially large charismatic ones. And these guys, as I mentioned here, massive threat is also climate change as well, which adding pressure on these guys. They tend to be moving northward, and obviously these guys, trying to survive, they'll go into villages and attack livestock, which angers the people and often leads to their deaths. But luckily there are managed populations outside of Sumatra. There's at least 50 managed within Australia and New Zealand, and they have been managed quite well to try and avoid inbreeding and such. So yeah, sad story for this guy, but looks like it's probably going to be on the up and up. The main difference really, this guy is mainly just smaller. I should have put a female in here. So this guy's like 0.8% size, which is really small. It looks wonderful though. It's got this brighter colour to it as well. Looks much more like a Sumatra. So yeah, I think this is about it for this video today. I really hope you guys enjoyed this video. I hope you guys like and subscribe. Always remember to click that little bell icon just in case you want to get notified whenever I upload anything. So yeah, hope you guys enjoyed this video. Hope you guys like and subscribe, and bye-bye.